Hi, in this video we're going to go over some free resources for conducting Massachusetts administrative legal research, as well as looking at some sources on the Social Law Library databases, which is a less expensive subscription database that you do have access to as a student. So I'm going to start here on the guide that we have to Massachusetts legal research, and here's my breadcrumb trail I got there from the law library page. I clicked on research guides and treatises, and then I'm in the Massachusetts administrative law tab. And this covers a lot of the same material as you're reading, but I thought it might be helpful for you to note this page. It does have additional information on using some print sources and also using the Massachusetts Register that I thought might be helpful. Okay, so the first place I want to look for free sources is the Mass Trial Court Law Library pages, which are now on mass.gov. I wanted to update something that I said in the first video. I said that there was only select sections of the CMR available here, but currently they're putting all of the Mass Trial Court Law Libraries are putting all of the CMR up here, and the statement is that they're updating it on a bi-weekly basis. I'm not sure whether that's true. It was a little hard for me to get currency information on these various sections, but in any case, it's a good place to find the text of the CMR citations and to do a little free research. I'll just show you what I mean about I'm not sure about the currency. Let's take a look at one of these CMRs. And you can see what you're getting here. Let's look at the Department of Children and Families. We're getting a PDF. We'll look at 110 CMR 3, a PDF of the CMR, the language itself, and then there's no currency date. So this date here is telling us 12/12/08 is telling us when the last time this section was updated was 12/12/08, but it's not telling us how current the whole database is. So we know that they put this in at some point after 12/12/08, but it's hard to know if there was anything newer except to rely on their statement that they're updating it every couple of weeks. So what that means to me is that I would definitely use this for a free research source and a source to read the text, but then I'd have to be careful about doing updating if there was anything I was interested in. Okay, one other thing I want to show you on this page is the CMR index, subject index that the Mass Trial Court Law Libraries have created. And this is really helpful for looking up CMR sections by topic. So for example, here's the one on acupuncture. So we talked about acupuncture earlier in the class as an example. And we can see here that it's giving you the sections of the CMR that have to do with acupuncturists. So it's not a complete list of index terms, but it's a really helpful one. So this is a good free source for finding sections of the Code of Mass Regulation if you already know the department that you're in, or by using the subject index. Some of the other things that are available here that might be helpful are executive orders, so that's a form of administrative law. And we can take a quick look here and you'll see it's various dates are covered. So you'd have to go in sort of governor by governor to look up this information, but it is a source of free executive orders here. Okay, the other administrative law topic that's sort of covered are agency decisions. And what we're getting here is a collection of the different state agencies and commission decisions that are available online. And when available, they'll give you a coverage date so you have a sense of how much coverage you're going to get. And there's a couple of different really important agencies here, including, like, for example, the Civil Service Commission, the Department of Education. One that I wanted to talk about are the Attorney General opinions. So this database has Attorney General opinions. It actually goes farther than 2006. But what you're getting here is the annual reports, which do contain those opinions, the formal opinions issued by the Attorney General mentioned in your reading. I think the last year that's available for the annual report is 2014. The one thing I will caution you about is there have not been a lot of formal opinions by the Attorney General in recent years. So if you're searching here, you might not see too much in the recent years, but it does give you some access. The other page I want to show you on Attorney General opinions gives you more of an overview of what they are, and it also links you or gives you the citation to the more requested opinions and the most recent opinions. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so the page I'm on is under, on the mass.gov site, Government Resources, Attorney General Opinions, and this is the overview. So it talks about the authority of the Attorney General to render these opinions and what the formal published opinions are. It gives you the four most recent ones, which the most recent one is back to 2001, so there's nothing very recent. And then it also tells you what ones are most commonly requested, so what ones are people interested in reading. I wanted to mention, in addition to these formal opinions of the Attorney General, the Attorney General does sometimes issue advisory opinions, and let's take a look at an example of that. Okay, so this is one of those advisory opinions I was talking about from the Attorney General. And if you read it, you can see that they say, oh, it's not a formal opinion, it's just for guidance. So the reason I'm suggesting for your research these can be helpful is it does explain, at least from the perspective of the Attorney General, which is an enforcement agency, what the law sets forth and or the regulations set forth. So if you're advising a client on compliance issues, it can be really helpful to know what the enforcement agencies, how they view, what's their interpretation of the law. Okay, so those were some of the sources I wanted to mention on the Mass Trial Court Law Library page, and then I also showed you a few things on the Attorney General opinions. And I want to take a look at one of the agency websites now and show you how you could use that to do some legal research. So we're going to use the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection webpage just so I can show you one example. I will say that each of the administrative agencies, their web pages might be set up a little bit differently, so you might have to poke around a little bit on the page to find the legal research resources that you're looking for. There's a couple of different places that you could go on this page to find help. So news and hearings, this can be good for proposed regulations, notices of hearings that the DEP has ongoing. You can look by topic area, so if you're interested in the laws that have to do with water resources, this might be a good way to go. But the way I'm going to show you to go in on this page is to use the Service Center. But I did want to point out there are multiple entry points, and you might see this on other agency web pages. So in the Service Center, there's permits and reporting forms. So if you're working for a company that needs a permit, that might be a good place that you need to go. One of the obvious places that are going to have sources of law is this Law and Rules tab. Let's take a quick look at that. And you can see that they're breaking down the different laws by topic and showing you the statutes and the regulations. I mean, we're just getting links and we're not getting a lot of explanation, but it's giving us by topic quickly where we can go to find out what are the statutes and regulations that have law on, for example, air quality. So that's a helpful free resource for us. Okay, let's go back to the Service Center. The other tab I want to show you here is Enforcement and Appeals. So on this Enforcement and Appeals page, we're getting links to, for example, the decisions of the administrative agency, in this case, the Mass DEP. We're also getting some background information, frequently asked questions, procedures, the regulations that have to do with appeals, so lots of helpful information on this page. We're also getting a link for the enforcement actions that the Mass DEP has entered into. So this would be on the side where the administrative agency is acting more like a court. Okay, so that's just an example of looking at the resources that are available on a particular agency page. So before we leave the DEP page, I want to just show you one other feature I think is really useful under laws and rules. Say I'm looking at one of these regulations I was looking at earlier, wetlands, 310 CMR 10, for example. This I find a little more helpful than just looking at it on the Mass Trial Court Law Libraries page, because in addition to getting a PDF of the current regulations, there's a section where I can see if there are any amendments, and also a section where I can look at the applicable permits and forms. One other thing is there's an ability here to subscribe, so that if there is something that you work with all the time for a particular client, you can look at all the proposed and recently promulgated regulations here, but you can also subscribe to get a regulations update. And what you need to do is put your email address in, and you can also use this page to unsubscribe. So if it's a client you're no longer working with and you're getting a lot of emails, you can unsubscribe there as well. So that's a really helpful feature, and it's fairly new. Okay, so that was most of what I wanted to talk to you about using a particular agency website. And as I mentioned, it might be different depending on the agency you're researching the setup. So definitely poke around a little bit, look for things called like regulation, enforcement, decisions. Those are going to be the sort of legal categories you want to look out for. Let's move now to look at what's available to us on the social law library databases. And this is just a reminder of how we get there using your student credentials. So on the Moakley Law Library website, it's Research, Law School Research Databases, and then it's listed alphabetically. And if you're off campus, you'll obviously go through the proxy server. And so I'm on the research databases. Before we looked at some of the material available under the substantive law links. Mostly what we were looking at then were trial court level decisions. Under this category of material, the administrative law material that's available to you here would be the Code of Mass Regulations and the state building codes. Let's just take a quick look so that you can get a look at the coverage date here. So this tells you right here how current it is, so that's really helpful to know how much updating you need to do. It's updated as of Mass Register number 1304, and the date is January 15th. You can search by citation, namely your chapter and section number, or run a full text search. Again, the help button here would get you, after a couple clicks, in to the search syntax that you can use on the social law library databases. Okay, let's go back out. The main category material I want to talk about here are those administrative agency decisions that are available on this database, and you can see there's a pretty decent list here. If we hover over it, we can see how far back and whether it's full coverage or select decisions. And I want to take an example here. Let's look at the Department of Environmental Protection again. And you can see this one goes pretty far back to 1983. And here you can see the coverage only goes up through October 29th, but it goes back fairly far, so it's a lot of coverage. And there's some different fields we could fill in here. Usually I don't know the docket number or file name. Sometimes I use the case name field if I want to know if the DEP has any had any actions against a particular company. I might put the name in there. Usually the section that I'm using is the text section, and what I normally do is I put my CMR section in here that I'm researching to see agency decisions and how they have interpreted particular sections of the CMR that I'm working with. Okay, so I'm just going to search for 310 CMR 10.01, which is part of those wetlands regulations, and I'm going to submit my query. I could also add in some potential search terms there. And you'll see that I'm getting back 70 decisions by the administrative agency, so I might want to limit it a little bit more. But this is just an example, and one thing I want to point out is that it's showing these by relevancy. If I wanted to look by decision date, I could switch that by clicking on the radio button. Let's just take a look at one of these cases so you can get a sense of what they look like. You can see that they're usually pretty short. They look a little bit like a court case. And that, they give you the background of the case and then come to the decision with some footnotes to the law and to the underlying materials. Okay, so hope that gives you a sense of what's available for free, some of the free resources out there for mass administrative law research, as well as using some of the social law library databases when you do administrative law research in Massachusetts.